The city was already awake, but softly so, like a creature stretching in the warmth of early morning. Rome at dawn did not roar, it breathed. The stones held the night's coolness, and the sky above the tiled roofs was pale and undecided, hovering between gray and gold. Somewhere far off, a baker slid loaves into an oven, the scent of yeast and ash drifting through narrow streets before the sound of voices arrived to claim it. Water murmured in fountains, endlessly patient, and sandals whispered against stone as people moved without hurry, knowing the day would be long enough for everything it needed to be. In this Rome, not the Rome of battles and blood and shouting crowds, but the Rome that existed quietly beneath all of that. There were jobs that did not grind the body into dust or shorten the breath. Jobs that allowed a person to live well, to sleep deeply, to grow old without fear. This was the Rome you would want to work in, the Rome of steady hands, trusted minds, and gentle routines. Take the librarian, for instance. His day began after sunrise, never before, because knowledge did not need to be rushed. He unlocked the doors of a private library owned by a senator who loved books more than power, which was rare but not unheard of. Inside, the air smelled of papyrus and cedar oil, a scent that calmed the chest and slowed the heart. Light filtered through high windows, dust motes floating like tiny planets in their own slow orbits. The librarian's job was not to read all day, though sometimes he did. Mostly, he organized, repaired, and protected. He unrolled scrolls carefully, smoothing the edges, whispering the titles to himself as if greeting old friends. Philosophy from Greece, histories of distant wars, poems meant to be read aloud on warm nights. He knew where everything belonged. Senators and scholars came quietly, speaking in low voices, and trusted him completely. He was paid well, treated with respect, and allowed to age. In the afternoons, when the heat grew heavy, he rested. No one questioned this. Wisdom, after all, required rest. Elsewhere in the city, a bathhouse manager walked the tiled floors of a grand therme. This was not the laborer hauling firewood or scrubbing floors, though those jobs existed too. This was the overseer, the calm presence who ensured everything flowed as it should. Water temperatures were checked, oils replenished, attendants quietly directed. Steam rose in gentle clouds, blurring the edges of marble statues until they seemed to breathe. People came to the baths not only to wash, but to relax, to talk softly, to let the world loosen its grip on them. The manager knew everyone. He remembered preferences. Cooler pools for the elderly senator with aching knees. Extra lavender oil for the merchant's wife who came in the afternoons. His voice was low, unhurried. Problems dissolved in his presence. At the end of the day, he went home clean, relaxed, and well-fed, carrying with him the satisfaction of having maintained peace in one small corner of the world. Then there was the estate accountant, a job far from the dust and noise of the streets. He worked in the shaded rooms of a villa just outside the city, where olive trees shimmered in the breeze and cicadas sang their endless, soothing song. His tools were wax tablets, a stylus, and a mind that loved balance. Numbers did not frighten him. They settled him. He tracked harvests, wages, shipments of wine and oil. He caught mistakes before they grew large. The estate owner valued him deeply, because wealth without order was chaos. The accountant was never shouted at. He was consulted. His days were predictable. He ate well, slept well, and walked among the trees in the evening, knowing that his work made everything else possible. In the forum, where voices usually clashed and echoed, there was a quieter role too, the legal scribe. Not the advocate who argued loudly before the magistrate, but the one who sat slightly apart, recording words with careful precision. His handwriting was admired, clean, elegant, impossible to mistake. People trusted him with contracts, wills, and promises that would outlive them. He listened more than he spoke. He noticed pauses, hesitations, changes in tone. In doing so, he learned more about human nature than most philosophers. When disputes ended peacefully, he felt a quiet pride. His hands were never calloused, his back never broken. He went home each evening with ink-stained fingers and a clear mind. At the edge of the city, where Rome softened to countryside, lived the garden designer. Not a farmer, though he respected farmers deeply, but an artist of living things. Wealthy families hired him to shape their villa gardens into places of shade and beauty. He understood how sunlight moved, how water traveled, how plants spoke to one another beneath the soil. He rose early, but not in a hurry. He walked through dew-covered paths, inspecting leaves, trimming gently, whispering encouragement to young vines. Birds knew him and did not flee when he passed. His work was slow by nature, and therefore never cruel. Years passed in seasons, not in stress. When people strolled through gardens he had designed and felt calm without knowing why, he smiled quietly to himself. Back in the city, above a bustling street, lived a textile merchant who specialized not in quantity but in quality. His shop was small and orderly. He sold linen so fine it felt like air, wool dyed in colors that held the sunset, silk that whispered when unfolded. His clients were loyal. He did not bargain loudly. Prices were fair and known. He worked with artisans he trusted, paid them well, and waited patiently for excellence. His days were spent touching fabric, discussing texture, appreciating craft. When the shop closed, he joined friends for dinner, his mind free of worry. There was enough. Always enough. One of the most peaceful jobs of all belonged to the household tutor. He lived with a wealthy family but was not a servant. He was addressed with respect, consulted on matters beyond education. Each morning, he taught children to read, to reason, to speak thoughtfully. He introduced them to stories, to ideas, to kindness. Afternoons were free. He read, walked, wrote letters. He watched his students grow into thoughtful adults and felt the rare satisfaction of having shaped the future gently. His presence in the household was steady, comforting, and deeply valued. When he grew old, he was kept close, never discarded. And then there were the surveyors, those quiet travelers who measured land not to conquer it, but to understand it. They walked fields with simple tools, aligning stones, noting boundaries, resolving disputes before they became arguments. They were welcomed wherever they went, because clarity brought peace. Their work took them through hills and valleys under wide skies. They slept deeply each night, tired in the best way. Rome trusted them. Rome needed them. And so they were always in demand. As the sun climbed higher, Rome grew louder. But these people remained untouched by the rush. They moved through the city like calm currents beneath waves. They had chosen paths, or been fortunate enough to be guided into them, that allowed life to unfold rather than be fought. Evening came slowly, shadows stretched. Lamps were lit. The city exhaled. Somewhere, the librarian closed a scroll. The bathhouse manager dimmed the lights. The accountant set aside his tablet. The garden designer rinsed soil from his hands. Each returned home, not drained, but full in a quiet, steady way. This was ancient Rome too. Not just marble and might, but balance, skill, trust. The kind of work that let a person rest their head at night without fear, knowing tomorrow would arrive gently, just like today. And as the city settled into sleep, the fountains continued their endless murmuring, carrying the promise that some lives, even in the greatest of empires, were meant to be lived softly. The night deepened, and Rome changed its voice. Daytime sounds softened to distance, like memories already fading. The streets no longer echoed with commerce or debate, but with the gentle closing of shutters and the low murmur of families settling in for the night. Oil lamps flickered in windows, their light trembling like fireflies caught in still air. Above it all, the sky stretched wide and patient, stars scattered generously, unconcerned with empire or ambition. In one quiet neighborhood near the Aventine Hill, a food taster for a noble household prepared for sleep. It was a job many misunderstood, imagining fear or constant danger, but the reality was far calmer. He was trusted, respected, and well compensated. His role was precaution, not sacrifice. He sampled meals lightly, carefully, long before they reached the table. Most days, there was nothing to note at all. He lived well, ate well, and was protected by the household he served. They depended on him. His evenings were peaceful, often spent walking in the garden or listening to musicians practice softly in distant rooms. The idea that his job was dangerous came mostly from gossip. In truth, it was stable, honored, and surprisingly gentle. Nearby, a mapmaker worked by lamplight, though not because he was rushed. He simply loved the quiet hours when the world stopped interrupting. His parchment spread across a wide table, lines forming coastlines and roads with steady confidence. He had never traveled to all the places he drew, yet he knew them intimately through reports, measurements, and careful study. His maps were prized by merchants and officials alike, not for conquest, but for clarity. A good map saved lives, prevented loss, reduced fear of the unknown. When he finished a piece, he rolled it carefully and tied it with linen thread, feeling a satisfaction that settled deep in the chest. Tomorrow, someone would travel more safely because of his work. Across the river, in a modest but elegant home, a wine steward rested after a day of tasting, cataloging, and advising. His nose and palate were famous, but he never boasted. Wine, to him, was a living thing, shaped by sun, soil, and time. He ensured that banquets flowed smoothly, that guests were pleased without excess, that vintages were stored properly and opened at the right moment. His work involved conversation, subtle judgment, and patience. He rarely drank to intoxication. Respect for the craft demanded restraint. As he lay down to sleep, he could still recall the warmth of a good Falernian on the tongue, the way it lingered like a story well told. In another part of the city, a clock-keeper caretaker of a public water clock made his final inspection of the evening. Time itself flowed through his hands, measured by dripping water and carved markings. Citizens relied on that steady passage to organize their days, to meet, to work, to rest. The clock-keeper's life followed a gentle rhythm: maintenance, adjustment, observation. He was never hurried. Time, after all, was his companion. When he locked the mechanism and extinguished the lamps, he felt aligned with something larger than himself. He slept deeply, knowing he had kept the city in quiet order. At dawn the next day, Rome woke again, untroubled. The bakers' ovens warmed, the fountains continued their endless song. And with the light came more lives shaped by work that did not bruise the spirit. Consider the professional letter writer, whose stall sat near the forum but slightly removed from its chaos. People came to him when words felt heavy or unreachable. Soldiers dictating messages home. Widows composing legal petitions. Merchants clarifying agreements. He listened carefully, translating emotion into clarity. He did not judge. He simply shaped the language so it could carry truth without harm. His reward was steady coin and the quiet gratitude of people relieved to be understood. Words, after all, could heal when handled gently. In the shade of a portico, an art restorer examined a statue with narrowed eyes and infinite patience. Time had softened its features, but he knew how to bring them back without violence. His tools were fine, his touch lighter than breath. Each repair honored the original hand that had shaped the stone decades before. He worked slowly, often alone, accompanied only by birds and the faint hum of the city beyond. His labor preserved beauty, allowing it to speak across generations. That knowledge steadied him, filled him with a calm pride. Not far away, a perfume blender prepared small vials of scented oil: rose, myrrh, cinnamon, iris. He knew how each note unfolded over time, how some scents whispered and others sang. Clients trusted him with intimate requests. Something to remember a lost love, something to inspire confidence, something to calm a restless mind. His workshop smelled like dreams. He worked with care, aware that scent traveled straight to memory. When he closed his shop, the fragrance lingered long after he had gone, a quiet signature left on the air. Rome also relied on its archivists, keepers of records that stretched backward like long shadows. These men and women worked in cool rooms lined with shelves, preserving documents that most would never read but many would someday need. Births, marriages, land transfers, citizenship records. The bones of society. Their days were orderly. Their minds sharp. They were rarely thanked directly, yet deeply necessary. Stability flowed from their careful attention. They took comfort in that invisible importance. As afternoon light softened, a ship scheduler at the port of Ostia reviewed incoming lists. His role was not physical labor but coordination. He knew tides, seasons, cargo patterns. He arranged arrivals so that chaos never took root. Merchants slept better because of him. Dock workers trusted his judgment. He lived near the sea, breathed salt air, and watched gulls circle lazily. His work connected Rome to the world without demanding his body in return. As evening returned once more, families gathered. Lamps were lit. Meals were shared. Those with these quieter jobs arrived home present, unafraid, able to listen and laugh. Their work had taken from them effort, not peace. Rome, so often remembered for its cruelty and excess, also held these lives balanced, skilled, humane. Empires were built by soldiers and rulers. Yes, but they were sustained by librarians, tutors, surveyors, stewards, designers, writers, and keepers of time. As night folded the city into rest again, the stones cooled, the stars watched patiently, and the fountains sang their eternal lullaby. Somewhere someone finished a day of good work and lay down without dread of tomorrow. And that, perhaps, was the greatest luxury ancient Rome could offer, not spectacle, but the quiet gift of a life well ordered, gently lived, and peacefully earned. Let the rhythm of that Rome carry you now, slow and steady, as sleep settles in, soft as lamplight fading from marble walls. In the heart of the Roman Empire, long after the legions marched and the senators debated, the city breathed. As night fell, a deep, unbroken quiet settled over the streets. The watchman's footsteps softened, no longer sharp but rounded by fatigue. High above, the moon traced silver along tiled roofs and temple columns, illuminating a city that, for all its immense power, knew how to rest. When morning came, a different kind of life stirred. Near the Tiber, a river inspector walked the embankment. His job wasn't heavy labor, it was observation. He checked water levels, noted the river's mood, and spoke with fishermen. His quiet work prevented floods, protected docks, and saved homes. He returned each day smelling faintly of water and reeds, his mind clear. Not far away, in a sunlit courtyard, a music instructor tuned a lyre. His students, children of families who valued harmony, learned to listen before they played, to find patience before performance. He believed music shaped the soul, and his art moved through rooms like a gentle breeze, never demanding attention. In a quiet corner of the city, a physician specialized in something rare: rest. He didn't mend battle wounds. He treated insomnia, fatigue, and lingering weakness. His prescriptions were simple: warm baths, light meals, gentle walks, and sleep at the proper hours. He worked with the body's natural rhythms, not against them, and people left his care hopeful and restored. Meanwhile, a monument caretaker dusted inscriptions with a soft cloth. His job was remembrance without grief. He kept public memory clean, readable, and intact. He worked in silence, often unnoticed, yet the order he maintained brought a subtle comfort to all who passed by. The past rested easily under his care. In the shaded markets, a spice merchant arranged his jars not to shout, but to reassure. His labels were clear, his prices fair. He never rushed his customers, patiently explaining flavors and suggesting calming herbs for the evening. His shop smelled of warmth and faraway places, and he closed his doors early, content with having done enough. High above the city, in an observatory, an assistant tracked the stars. Not to foretell doom, but simply to mark the seasons and keep time. The nights were long but peaceful, filled with a profound silence. He lived happily out of step with the rest of Rome, his workplace the vast, uncomplaining sky. And in a bustling office, a messenger coordinator planned routes. He didn't run. He thought. He designed efficient paths and fair schedules, ensuring messages arrived without panic and runners didn't collapse from exhaustion. His greatest pride was in invisible success, the smooth, unnoticed flow of communication. These were the jobs that didn't make the history books. They didn't command armies or build grand monuments. But they were the threads that wove the fabric of daily life. They made Rome not just powerful, but livable. They were the river inspectors, the music teachers, the keepers of clocks and gardens. As evening returned and lamps were lit across the city, the day's work settled not as a burden, but as a quiet fulfillment. The empire, it turns out, rested on something far stronger than conquest. It rested on balance. On work that left room for breathing. On lives that ended each day not with collapse, but with a deep and quiet satisfaction. Thank you for watching. The city stayed hushed, as if it had learned something important and did not wish to forget it. Rome at this hour belonged not to ambition, but to continuity, the slow, reassuring sense that tomorrow would resemble today closely enough to be trusted. Before sunrise, a grain quality inspector arrived at a warehouse near the port. He did not lift sacks or shout orders. He examined. He pressed kernels between his fingers, smelled the grain, watched how it fell back into his palm. His judgment protected thousands from hunger or illness. Millers respected him. Bakers waited for his word. His work demanded attention, not strength. He finished by mid-morning and returned home early, carrying bread baked from grain he had approved, satisfied in a way that ran deeper than praise. In a shaded atrium nearby, a household manager reviewed the day's schedule. Meals, visitors, repairs. Everything flowed through her calm authority. She knew which servant preferred which task, which guest needed quiet, which corner of the house caught the best breeze in the afternoon. The household functioned smoothly because of her, yet she rarely raised her voice. Organization was her language. In the evenings, when her duties were done, she sat with a cup of warm wine and herbs, content in the knowledge that harmony had been maintained. Across the city, a stone measurer worked on a new public building. Not a mason shaping blocks, but the one ensuring proportions were true, lines aligned, stress distributed wisely. His calculations kept walls standing for generations. He was valued for his precision and patience. When his measurements were complete, he stepped back and watched others work, knowing his contribution would never be visible, but would always be felt. Near a temple courtyard, a bird keeper tended to sacred doves. His job was care, not spectacle, clean water, fresh grain, quiet spaces. He moved gently, speaking softly. The birds trusted him. Visitors found the courtyard peaceful, without understanding why. Calm had been cultivated there deliberately, feather by feather. At a crossroads shaded by fig trees, a road inspector walked slowly, tapping stones with a short staff. He listened for hollow sounds, noted wear before it became danger. Travelers passed him with nods of thanks. Good roads meant safe journeys. Safe journeys meant fewer fears. His work shortened no life and lengthened many. As afternoon stretched lazily onward, a theater script keeper unlocked a small room behind the stage. Scrolls lay neatly stored comedies, tragedies, forgotten works waiting patiently. Actors came to consult him. He remembered lines better than most performers. He loved stories, but loved preservation more. Without him, words would vanish. With him, they endured. When rehearsals ended, he locked the door carefully, as if tucking the stories into sleep. In a sun-warmed courtyard, a public fountain caretaker checked water flow. He adjusted stone channels, removed leaves, smoothed edges worn by hands. Children splashed nearby, laughing softly. Clean water was comfort. He gave it daily, quietly. As dusk approached again, a city lamp planner walked his route. He noted which lamps burned low, which needed oil, which corners felt too dark. His planning made night less frightening. He worked ahead of danger, not behind it. Rome moved toward evening once more, wrapped in routines that had been repeated so often they felt timeless. Dinner smoke curled upward. Voices softened. Feet slowed. Those who held these gentle jobs returned home with energy still intact. They spoke kindly. They listened. They slept without calculating tomorrow's survival. And so the empire rested not only on marble and law, but on these countless quiet roles work that respected the body, steadied the mind, and allowed the soul to remain unbruised. As night settled in again, fountains whispered, stars watched, and Rome breathed evenly, an enormous city made gentle by the people who kept it so. Let that steadiness carry you now. Let the slow rhythm of ancient streets, calm work, and unhurried lives ease your thoughts into stillness until sleep arrives without effort, just as it always did for those who chose a life that allowed rest. The night did not end abruptly. It loosened its grip slowly, the way a calm mind drifts toward morning without urgency. Rome hovered in that in-between space where dreams still linger, where the city seemed less like stone and more like something alive, resting between breaths. Before the sun showed itself, a harbor tide reader stood quietly at the water's edge. He did not command ships or haul ropes. He watched. He studied the movement of water against the posts, the pull of the moon, the subtle signals that told him when departures would be smooth and when waiting would be wiser. Captains trusted him because he never rushed fate. His advice saved cargo lives and nerves. When his work was done, he walked home along the shoreline, the salt air steadying his thoughts, his day already complete before most had begun. Inland, a census organizer prepared records for the coming month. Not the officials who knocked on doors, but the mind behind the system. He ensured households were counted once, fairly, without confusion. His work prevented chaos before it ever appeared. He loved patterns, clarity, the comfort of knowing where things stood. He was never shouted at, never hurried. Rome valued order, and order valued him. In a shaded colonnade, a marble cleaner began gently wiping dust from statues. He used water and cloth only, no harsh scraping. Time would continue its work no matter what he did, but he slowed its touch where he could. People passed these statues daily, comforted by their familiar presence. He ensured they remained recognizable, dignified, quietly watching over the city. His hands smelled of stone and water, and he liked that. Nearby, a child attendant in a noble household prepared games for the afternoon. His role was not discipline, but attention. He knew which child needed calm activities, which needed movement, which needed quiet company. He prevented tears by noticing early. His work was light, but important. He went home tired in the pleasant way that comes from care, not strain. As the sun rose higher, a public seating arranger checked benches along a busy street. He shifted one slightly into shade, removed a cracked plank, brushed away debris. Elderly citizens would rest there later without thinking about why it felt comfortable. That was his specialty comfort that went unnoticed. In a small, cool room beneath a villa, a document seal keeper heated wax carefully. He pressed official seals with precision, ensuring authenticity and trust. His hands were steady. His reputation spotless. Forgery failed because of him. Peace followed. At midday, a meal planner for a communal kitchen reviewed supplies. He balanced nutrition and cost, flavor and availability. He had learned which combinations satisfied without excess. People left those meals full, not heavy. Nourished, not dulled. His job shaped health quietly, one pot at a time. As heat shimmered on the streets, a shade architect inspected awnings stretched between buildings. He adjusted angles, tightened lines, redirected shadows. The city cooled slightly under his care. Rome knew comfort because someone had designed it. In the late afternoon, a bell-tone tuner climbed a small tower. He listened carefully, adjusted metal, struck softly, listened again. The bell marked hours, gatherings, warnings, but never harshly. The sound spread evenly, calm and clear. People trusted it. They lived by it. As evening approached once more, a household story reader prepared for the night. Families gathered not for spectacle, but for familiarity. His voice was warm, unforced. He chose stories that soothed rather than stirred. Children slept easily after hearing him. Adults relaxed into silence. And once again, lamps glowed, doors closed, and Rome exhaled. The city did not depend on constant struggle. It depended on people who understood when enough was enough. Who worked within daylight, who respected the body's limits. Who allowed rest to be part of life, not a reward withheld. These were the best jobs in ancient Rome, not because they brought fame, but because they brought balance. They made room for evenings, for laughter, for sleep that came without worry. And as the night deepened yet again, and the fountains whispered their endless lullaby, the city rested securely on the quiet strength of lives lived well. Let that calm settle over you now, slow and certain, until your thoughts drift gently away, and sleep arrives just as it always did in Rome, without force, without fear, simply because it was time. The calm did not fade, it widened. Rome, wrapped once more in darkness, seemed to understand that nothing needed to be proven. The streets lay open and unguarded by worry. The air cooled just enough to invite deeper breaths, longer pauses, slower thoughts. Near the outer gardens of a villa district, a night garden watcher made his rounds. His task was not defense, but care. He checked irrigation channels, listened for the soft drip of water, brushed fallen petals from stone paths so morning walkers would not slip. Owls watched him without fear. He moved as though he belonged to the night itself. His hours were quiet, his pace steady, his sleep deep when dawn relieved him. Some people feared the dark. He found it gentle. Inside the city walls, a stairwell architect reviewed plans for a new insula. He worked by lamplight not from pressure, but preference. Staircases were his specialty, angles that eased knees, steps that did not exhaust, landings that invited rest. Most would never notice his work directly. They would simply climb without pain. That was success. In a modest workshop, a cushion maker stuffed linen covers with wool, testing each one carefully. He believed comfort was a form of dignity. Senators and shopkeepers alike sat on his work. He never rushed a stitch. When his hands tired, he stopped. Tomorrow would be there. Elsewhere, a public notice painter refreshed faded letters on stone walls. He traced curves slowly, restoring clarity. Announcements mattered only if they could be read without strain. His work required patience, not speed. His eyes remained sharp into old age. As midnight approached, a well keeper lowered a bucket, listening to the echo, judging depth by sound alone. He tested water, adjusted the cover, secured the rope. Wells were life. He treated them with respect. He lived nearby, always available, always calm. People slept easier knowing he was there. In a warm, quiet home, a meal fermenter checked jars of olives, garum, and preserved fruits. Time did most of the work. His role was guidance, not force. He understood when to wait. His food fed families through seasons. His patience tasted like security. Toward the edge of the city, a road lantern cleaner wiped soot from glass panels. The light grew clearer, softer. Travelers approaching Rome at night felt welcomed rather than warned. He finished before dawn, leaving behind a path of gentle glow. As hours passed, Rome shifted again, preparing for morning without haste. No bells rang sharply. No commands echoed. The city trusted its rhythm. In a quiet home near the Forum, a retirement caretaker checked on elder scholars. He brewed warm drinks, adjusted cushions, opened shutters slowly. His presence was steady and kind. Wisdom aged well under his care. At first light, a birdsong listener, a simple official roll recorded seasonal changes. Which birds returned? Which left? When songs shifted. These notes guided planting and festivals. He loved mornings. They greeted him gently. Soon bread scents returned. Doors opened. Sandals brushed stone. Another day began not loud, not desperate, but assured. These jobs, these lives, existed not to impress history, but to sustain it. They left space for families, for thought, for rest. They understood that work was meant to support life, not consume it. Rome endured because so many chose balance over urgency. And now, as the city continues its endless, patient cycle, let your own breathing match its pace. Slow, even, untroubled. Imagine yourself there, not striving, not hurrying, simply belonging to a world where the day's work ends gently and night arrives like a promise kept. Let that feeling remain. Nothing is required of you now. Sleep, like Rome itself, will hold you steady. The quiet stretched on, generous and unbroken, as if time itself had decided to rest its weight for a while. Rome did not disappear in sleep. It softened, becoming a city made of breath and habit rather than stone and command. In the half-light before dawn, a morning air tester stood on a low terrace, eyes closed, face lifted. His role was subtle and trusted. He noticed changes others ignored: smoke that lingered too long, dampness that hinted at rot, sweetness that meant flowering vines had opened somewhere nearby. His notes guided cleaners, gardeners, and builders. Health began with awareness. He finished his work before most had woken, carrying nothing but observations and a sense of having helped the city breathe more easily. Nearby, a linen inspector ran fabric through her fingers, testing softness and strength. She worked with suppliers who valued her judgment, knowing that her approval meant garments would last, would feel kind against skin. Clothing, she believed, should not remind a person of hardship. Her workspace was bright, her hours reasonable, her reputation secure. As the sun climbed, a civic seating planner observed foot traffic from a shaded corner. He watched where people paused, where they leaned, where they gathered. Later, benches would appear in those places, perfectly placed as if by instinct. People would sit without thinking, that was the goal. In a small archive room cooled by thick walls, a memory indexer arranged scrolls by theme rather than date. Grief, celebration, law, land. He believed emotions mattered as much as chronology. Those who came searching often found what they needed faster because of him. His work required empathy more than speed. He returned home each evening with a quiet sense of having guided someone gently. Midday arrived without urgency. A sound softener, an expert in acoustics, adjusted wooden panels in a public hall. He reduced echoes, calmed sharp noises, made voices easier to hear. Arguments diminished there, though no one quite knew why. Peace sometimes came from structure, not persuasion. In a modest kitchen, a water balancer mixed warm and cool for communal baths. Temperature mattered. Comfort mattered. People left those baths relaxed instead of drained. He took pride in the unseen. As shadows lengthened, a breeze path observer walked narrow streets, noting how air moved between buildings. His recommendations shaped future construction, allowing wind to cool homes naturally. Rome slept better because air could travel freely. Near sunset, a lamp oil refiner tested blends to reduce smoke and harshness. His lamps burned steady and clean, easing eyes and lungs. Families lingered longer in gentle light. He watched the flames like companions. As evening returned inevitable, welcome, the city folded into itself once more. Doors closed softly. Laughter drifted briefly, then faded. The fountains resumed their low, endless murmur, as if reassuring the stones beneath them. Those with these quiet callings returned home not emptied, but settled. Their work had not demanded urgency or fear. It had allowed them to remain themselves. Rome, in its truest form, was not loud or cruel. It was careful. It endured because people chose roles that honored rhythm over force. And now, as the city drifts once more into night, let that understanding rest with you. Let the idea of a life shaped by balance, by gentleness, by enough, settle into your thoughts. Nothing presses. Nothing pulls. Like ancient Rome at rest, you are allowed to be still. A stillness stayed with the city, patient and wide, as if Rome itself were holding a long, contented breath. Nothing pushed forward, nothing lagged behind. Time moved the way water does in deep channels, slow, certain, impossible to rush. In the quietest hours of night, a threshold keeper made his gentle rounds. His responsibility was simple: doorways. He checked that public buildings were closed properly, that hinges rested without strain, that locks turned smoothly. A good doorway, he believed, should open easily in the morning and close without complaint at night. He worked with oil and cloth, not force. Because of him, mornings began without frustration. Nearby, a warmth regulator tended the hypocaust of a public bath that would open later in the day. He adjusted heat gradually, never sharply, allowing warmth to rise evenly through stone floors. His skill was patience. Too fast and cracks formed. Too slow and discomfort followed. He left the baths ready to receive people gently, not shock them awake. As dawn approached, a milk freshness assessor visited vendors before crowds arrived. He tasted lightly, smelled carefully, nodded approval, or suggested waiting another hour. His role protected children, elders, the vulnerable. Vendors trusted him because he never embarrassed them. Health did not need shouting. In a shaded alley, a quiet street sweeper began early work. He moved methodically, not racing, not dragging. His broom made a soft, rhythmic sound that blended with birdsong. By the time shops opened, the street felt welcoming. Cleanliness, he believed, was a form of kindness. As the sun rose higher, a fountain sound tuner adjusted stone lips where water fell. Too loud and it startled, too soft and it disappeared. He shaped sound the way others shaped marble. The city felt calmer because of him, though few ever knew his name. In a light-filled room, a children's nap coordinator in a large household arranged cushions, dimmed curtains, lowered voices. Rest was scheduled, respected, protected. She believed tired minds grew sharp again only through sleep. She practiced what she taught. Midday heat arrived gently, soft by shade planners and breeze watchers. A hydration guide placed water jars where people naturally passed, not hidden, not intrusive. Thirst was met without effort. No one felt weak. No one felt rushed. In the afternoon, a bookbinder stitched worn pages together, restoring spines, smoothing covers. Stories returned to usefulness under his hands. He worked slowly, humming without realizing it. Words survived because of him. As evening neared, a communal silence observer noted how sound changed at dusk. He advised markets when to close, performers when to soften, households when to quiet. The city transitioned into night without friction. And once again, Rome rested. Not because it had exhausted itself, but because it had learned when to stop. These were the best jobs in ancient Rome, not glamorous, not loud, but sustaining. They allowed people to move through life without fear of tomorrow. They left room for evenings, for families, for thoughts that wandered without worry. As the lamps dimmed and the streets emptied, the city returned to its most honest state, balanced, breathing, unafraid of stillness. Let your thoughts drift there now. Nothing waits for you, nothing demands. Like Rome at rest, you are supported by quiet systems you do not need to manage. Sleep can arrive naturally, gently, exactly when it should. The night accepted everything without comment. It gathered the city gently, like a cloak laid over shoulders already relaxed. Rome no longer felt vast or imposing. It felt personal, knowable, like a place that understood how to hold people without asking anything back. In the deepest hours, when even thoughts moved slowly, a city pulse listener paused at familiar corners. He leaned against stone walls, closed his eyes, and listened, not for danger, but for imbalance. Too much silence could mean trouble. Too much noise could mean unrest. He noted the rhythm of footsteps, the spacing of voices, the way sound carried. By morning, his observations would help keep the city steady. Balance, again, was the goal. Near a small shrine, a flame keeper tended the eternal lamp. His work was repetitive, almost meditative. Trim the wick, adjust the oil, watch the flame settle into a steady glow. The light did not need to impress anyone. It only needed to continue. He felt no pressure. Continuity was enough. In a quiet storehouse, a rope conditioner ran fibers through warm oil, strengthening them against wear. Good ropes prevented accidents. They lifted loads safely. They did not snap under stress. He took his time. Rushing weakened things. As dawn crept closer, a dew watcher walked gardens and rooftops, noting how moisture gathered overnight. His notes informed gardeners, builders, and farmers. Water, after all, was not only something that floated, settled, lingered, soaked in. He loved mornings best, when the world felt new but unhurried. In a modest kitchen, a breakfast grain soaker prepared bowls long before anyone arrived. Oats, barley, spelt softened overnight, ready to nourish without burdening the body. He believed mornings should begin gently. People left his meals warm, not heavy. As the city stirred, a stair rail smoother ran his hand along polished wood and stone, finding rough spots by feel alone. He sanded lightly, oiled carefully. Falls were prevented by small acts done consistently. He never hurried. Safety did not like haste. In a shaded atrium, a dispute softener listened to neighbors describe small grievances, noise, boundaries, misunderstandings. He reframed words, slowed tempers, guided resolution before anger hardened. Most conflicts ended quietly. That was his success. By midday, a shadow tracker noted how buildings cast lines across streets. He adjusted temporary screens, advised vendors where to move, suggested rest times. Shade, he knew, was invisible relief. Rome cooled because someone paid attention. In the afternoon calm, a quiet errand organizer matched needs with routes. Who could deliver what without strain? No one was overloaded. No one was idle. Work flowed evenly. As evening returned, yet again faithful, familiar, the city softened once more. Lamps glowed. Doors closed. Laughter rose and fell like gentle waves. Those who held these roles returned home with minds still their own. Their work had not demanded urgency, fear, or sacrifice of self. It had fit into life rather than consuming it. This was the Rome that endured not because it was loud, but because it was careful, because it respected limits, because it allowed sleep to come easily. And now, as the city drifts once more into rest, let your thoughts drift with it. There is nothing left to manage. Nothing left to plan. Like ancient Rome at peace with itself, you are allowed to stop. Sleep will come, steady and unforced, just as it always does when the day has been lived gently. The city no longer counted the hours, it trusted them. Rome rested in that deep layer of night where even memory feels distant, where the mind loosens its grip and lets the body decide what comes next. The stones, warmed by the day and cooled by darkness, released their heat slowly, like a long exhale. In a quiet corridor beneath a public building, a floor smoothness tester ran bare feet over marble. He believed feet told the truth better than eyes. Where he felt a ridge or dip, he marked it gently. Tomorrow someone would sand it down. No one would trip, no one would notice why. Comfort, he knew, was best when invisible. Nearby, a roof moisture checker climbed carefully, lantern low, testing tiles for seepage after the night air settled. He listened for the softest sounds, water where it should not be. His work prevented leaks before they became worries. He returned home before dawn, satisfied, unsoaked, unhurried. In a dim archive room, a document error gently unrolled old scrolls, allowing them to breathe. Too much confinement made paper brittle. He rotated them slowly, giving each its turn in fresh air. Preservation required patience, he had plenty. As the earliest light touched the edges of the sky, a window orientation advisor walked streets noting which shutters caught morning sun too harshly. Later adjustments would be made. Light should wake, not startle. People rose calmly because someone had thought ahead. In a public courtyard, a pebble arranger shifted stones beneath benches so they would not wobble. He pressed each one firmly, testing balance. Stability mattered in small things. In a household kitchen, a water-warming coordinator prepared basins at just the right temperature. Not hot, not cold. Gentle enough to soothe joints and wake hands slowly. Mornings began kindly there. As the city stirred again, A voice volume guide reminded market vendors to raise sound gradually. Abrupt noise startled animals, children, tempers. The market grew lively without becoming harsh. People lingered longer. In a shaded room, a handwriting assessor reviewed petitions for clarity, not content. He returned documents gently if letters strained the eye. Communication should not require effort. Understanding flowed because of him. By midday, a rest interval planner signaled pauses in workshops. Tools were set down, water was taken. No one argued, productivity rose because bodies were respected. Rome did not mistake exhaustion for virtue. In the afternoon lull, a corridor breeze adjuster opened and closed internal doors by hand, directing airflow where it was needed. No draft was sharp, no room stale. The city breathed evenly. As evening approached yet again, familiar and reassuring, a communal lamplighter moved slowly through streets, greeting residents by name. Flames caught gently, one by one, until dusk glowed softly rather than sharply. Children watched without excitement. It was expected. That was the comfort. And once more, Rome folded itself into night. Not because it was forced to stop, but because it knew when to rest. These were the lives woven through the empire, the quiet jobs, the careful roles, the ones that left room for being human. They did not demand sacrifice of health or peace. They allowed work and rest to coexist. As the fountains whispered and the stars held their positions patiently, the city settled into the kind of sleep that comes from balance, not exhaustion. Let yourself follow that rhythm now. There is nothing unfinished. Like Rome at rest, you is supported, held, and allowed to drift slowly, safely into sleep. The city remained hushed, yet alive in the kind of way that only comes from order and care. Rome's streets, empty of most footsteps, seemed to hum softly with the presence of those who had quietly shaped the day. Each stone, each arch, each lamp held traces of hands that worked not for fame, but for balance, hands that allowed life to flow gently. Before dawn, a water channel listener checked the aqueduct flows. He pressed his ear to the stone, noting echoes, pauses, subtle shifts in the current. If water moved too fast, too slow, too unevenly, it could upset fountains, baths, gardens, even kitchens. He marked adjustments carefully, correcting flows before anyone would notice a problem. His work was unseen but essential. He carried no burden of hurry, only the satisfaction of knowing things would function as they should. When his rounds were complete, he walked home under a sky shifting slowly from deep blue to soft gold, breathing the calm of a city already aligned. Nearby, a tile inspector moved from rooftop to rooftop. He did not lay tiles himself. He did not wield hammers. He simply noted cracked edges, lifted pieces that had shifted, marked spots for repair. The next day, the right craftsman would arrive. Today he ensured no roof would leak. His eyes were sharp, his mind steady, his hours measured not by urgency but by care. As sunlight touched the horizon, he descended, satisfied that homes would remain dry and safe. In a quiet courtyard, a child activity planner arranged toys, balls, and scrolls. She understood energy and calm, knew which games overstimulated, which fostered reflection, which allowed little minds to rest naturally. Children arrived mid-morning to find that the space welcomed them softly, guiding them into play rather than controlling it. Nearby, a street fragrance regulator monitored scents drifting from bakeries, herb stalls, and flower markets. He advised vendors to adjust fires or bundles of herbs so the city smelled alive but never overwhelming. Balance, he knew, shaped moods. Citizens and travelers moved through Rome without irritation or fatigue because someone cared about the air itself. In a quiet side street, a public bench inspector adjusted loose planks and checked supports. Each touch ensured comfort without fanfare. People sat without thinking, and that was exactly the point. As midday heat grew, a water temperature monitor at the public baths checked pools and basins. Not rushed, he adjusted warmth to soothe rather than shock, balancing sunlight, stone, and current. Visitors enjoyed their baths without complaint, unconsciously trusting the rhythm someone had arranged so carefully. At a small workshop, a scroll roller moved old parchments with deliberate precision. Paper, fragile and ancient, was smoothed gently, rolled evenly, tied with linen so that it would survive the decades. The city's memory remained intact because of such meticulous care. As the afternoon softened, a courtyard wind adjuster opened and closed shutters with subtle timing, allowing breezes to cool spaces naturally. Windows and doors shifted almost imperceptibly, and no one noticed, but everyone felt relief. By evening, a lamp oil balancer began his rounds. Droplets were measured, wicks trimmed, flames caught just right. Streets glowed not harshly, but steadily, welcoming travelers and residents alike. Lamps illuminated paths without glare. People moved through the city unconsciously soothed by their presence. And as night returned once more, Rome folded into its own quiet perfection. Families gathered, fountains murmured endlessly, and the stars stretched across the sky like calm witnesses. Those who had worked in these careful, gentle roles returned home with minds intact and bodies relaxed. Their days were full, their nights secure. Rome endured not only through conquest or laws, but through the patient attention of countless hands and minds that understood balance. These were the best jobs, not for prestige or glory, but because they allowed life to continue gently, fully, and with dignity. Let yourself now drift into that rhythm. Let the soft pulse of the city, the careful work of unseen hands, the gentle turning of day into night, guide your thoughts. Nothing presses. Nothing waits. Like Rome at rest, you are safe, steady, and free to sink deeper into sleep. The night stretched on, endless and generous, folding Rome into a deep, steady calm. The city no longer felt enormous or intimidating. It felt like a place breathing softly alive with order and care, where every shadow and stone had its purpose, and every hand that worked had left space for life to unfold gently. In the cool hours before dawn, a bellkeeper quietly inspected the bronze tones of public bells. He tapped lightly, listening for dull spots or irregular echoes. Each sound mattered. A misaligned tone could unsettle gatherings, confuse signals, disturb the rhythm of the city. He corrected gently, without rush or force, ensuring that when the bells rang the next day, they would soothe rather than jolt. Nearby, a bridge monitor checked stone joints and railings over the Tiber. He walked slowly, pressed his hands against worn edges, and marked minor repairs for the craftsmen. Travelers would cross safely, unaware of the vigilance behind their steps. His satisfaction lay in the silent continuity he maintained, unseen yet essential. In shaded gardens, a herb arranger moved carefully among beds of rosemary, thyme, and lavender. He trimmed, pruned, and guided growth in subtle ways. Fragrant trails wound naturally through the villa grounds, easing the steps and minds of visitors without them ever knowing why they felt so calm. At a bustling market, a stall spacing supervisor measured distances between vendors. Too close and crowds became uneasy. Too far, and the marketplace lost harmony. He adjusted angles, left small gaps, and watched people move naturally, maintaining an invisible rhythm that made the market inviting and gentle. In a quiet room beneath the city walls, a scroll preserver brushed dust lightly, rolled fragile parchment, and tied it with linen thread. Centuries of knowledge rested under his careful hands, held intact because he understood patience better than haste. Each scroll would survive to tell its story. A stair-step polisher moved from insula to insula, smoothing edges worn by generations of feet. Children, elders, merchants all walked safely because he respected the flow of life. His work went unnoticed, but every step of the city depended on it. At a public fountain, a water clarity tester checked levels, stones, and channels. Flow was steady, clean, untroubled. Children splashed, elders washed hands, travelers paused, all safe, all refreshed, because someone had thought ahead. As dawn hinted above the horizon, a courtyard light adjuster opened shutters and doors gradually. Morning arrived softly, flooding rooms with gentle warmth. Families rose slowly, bodies eased into movement, minds unhurried. Someone somewhere had ensured that their day would begin without shock. In a small workshop, a rope tension calibrator tested fibers for elasticity and resilience. Loads would lift safely, sails would catch wind properly, gates would close smoothly. His work demanded precision, not speed. Life moved more securely because of him. By midday, a city sound harmonizer walked streets, listening to echoes, adjusting simple structures, redirecting voices where needed. Markets felt lively, fountains cheerful, conversations easy. No one noticed, but the city moved more smoothly because he had listened. As evening fell again, a lantern oil apportioner moved steadily from street to street. Flames caught perfectly, spreading calm, welcoming warmth, marking paths without glare. Residents drifted home. Travelers passed quietly. The city glowed like a patient heartbeat. Rome had survived centuries not only because of law, empire, or stone, but because countless lives had been devoted to gentle precision, to careful attention, to creating an environment where humans could live without constant friction. And as the fountains whispered, lamps flickered, and stars rotated silently above, the city exhaled, settling into sleep. Those who had worked throughout the day rested deeply. Their minds were clear, their bodies unharmed, their spirits content. Let that image carry you now. Imagine yourself walking along quiet stone streets, feeling air that has been balanced, light that has been softened, water that flows steadily. You are supported by invisible care. Just as Rome is, nothing presses. Nothing demands. Sleep, like the city at rest, arrives effortlessly. The night deepened, stretching like velvet over the city, softening the edges of every street, every wall, every corner. Rome did not slumber in silence, it breathed, slowly, steadily. Each stone and tile and lamp aligned to a rhythm cultivated by hands that cared more for steadiness than for glory. Before the sun returned, a grain store guardian walked quietly through dim corridors. He did not move sacks, nor rush deliveries. He listened to the air, pressed a few kernels, tested the grain's aroma, noted any hint of moisture. His vigilance ensured that families would eat safely tomorrow. Each observation was a promise kept without fanfare. Nearby, a garden trellis mender adjusted climbing vines with gentle hands. He twisted supports, tied knots carefully, making sure that flowers and fruits grew straight and healthy. The garden seemed effortless to those who walked there, yet every curve, every shade, every breeze was guided by him. In the distance, a city sound balancer adjusted small acoustic channels in public halls. He softened sharp echoes, redirected boisterous energy, allowed conversation to travel naturally. People entered, spoke, laughed, and left without thinking about why the space felt calm. At a riverside dock, a boat mooring specialist checked ropes and posts. Ships rested safely overnight. Travelers would leave without incident. His hands moved slowly, deliberately, leaving no space for error. Inside a villa kitchen, a meal temperature advisor stirred gently, tested warmth of soups and breads. Food nourished without surprise, never scorching, never cold. He worked invisibly, yet everyone who ate thrived because of his care. Along the city streets, a stairway light adjuster positioned lamps, leaving shadows soft and paths visible. Travelers and merchants moved comfortably, guided by light that never startled. High above, a rooftop rain collector inspected channels and basins. He shifted leaves, cleared small debris, ensured that water flowed evenly into cisterns. The city would drink tomorrow without worry or interruption. In a quiet courtyard, a bench stability checker ran his hands along planks and stone, ensuring seating was safe, steady, and comfortable. Children sat, elders rested, friends lingered, none aware of the meticulous work beneath their comfort. At a scroll repository, a humidity guardian rotated fragile parchment slowly, opened windows just enough to allow air, but not too much. Knowledge endured because someone understood patience and precision. Even as dawn approached, a lamp wick trimmer moved carefully through narrow streets, adjusting flame heights, testing oils, ensuring that early risers would find gentle illumination, not harsh light. And yet, despite all this care, Rome appeared effortless. Streets, fountains, gardens, courtyards, homes all moved in quiet harmony. Life proceeded, families rose, markets began, and the city itself seemed unaware of the invisible hands shaping every detail. The best jobs in ancient Rome were those that maintained balance, care, and quiet order. They were not admired by historians or sung by poets, but they created a city where people could live, breathe, and sleep without fear or fatigue. These roles allowed nights to be calm, mornings to be gentle, and days to unfold naturally. Now, as the fountains whisper, lamps flicker softly, and stars fade into dawn, let the rhythm of Rome guide your own breath. Let the careful attention of unseen hands soothe your thoughts. Nothing demands of you now. Sleep, like the city at rest, arrives effortlessly. Your mind can loosen, your body can relax in the gentle pulse of this ancient, patient city can carry you deeper into calm, steady dreams.